Between 1991 and 2002, Sierra Leone went through one of the longest and most brutal civil wars in the region that destroyed the country and made it a shadow of itself. The war, which lasted 11 years, was characterized by extreme brutality, including widespread atrocities such as rape, mutilation, and the use of child soldiers. The war left an estimated 50,000 people dead and many more wounded, displaced, or traumatized. Despite its tragic legacy, the Sierra Leone Civil War also serves as a powerful reminder of the resilience and perseverance of the human spirit, as well as the importance of international efforts to promote peace and justice in the face of conflict and oppression. Before the Civil War, Sierra Leone was known for its abundant natural resources, including diamonds, gold, bauxite, and iron ore, which gave the country a lot of potential for growth and development. However, the benefits of these resources were not evenly distributed, and the country remained one of the poorest in the world, with high levels of poverty, unemployment, and underdevelopment. Today, Sierra Leone is struggling to get back on its feet, but the destruction caused by the war is making it extremely difficult for the country, which is why Sierra Leone is still one of the poorest and undeveloped countries in Africa. In this video, we shall be telling you exactly what caused the Civil War and why it lasted for that long. But first, take a few seconds and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of our videos. The truth is, there was no single main cause of the Sierra Leone Civil War. Rather, the conflict was the result of a complex mix of factors that came together to create a volatile situation in the country. Some of the key factors that contributed to the outbreak of the war included political corruption, economic inequality, social exclusion, ethnic tensions, and the exploitation of natural resources. Political corruption. Sierra Leone gained independence from Britain on April 27, 1961, and initially adopted a parliamentary system of government. The country's first prime minister was Sir Milton Margai, who was succeeded by his brother, Sir Albert Margai, in 1964. The country was then ruled by a series of civilian and military governments over the next few decades. The early years of independence were marked by political stability and economic growth, as the government pursued policies aimed at modernizing the country and promoting economic development. Political corruption was one of the underlying causes of the Sierra Leone Civil War, as it undermined the legitimacy of the government and contributed to the breakdown of governance and the rule of law. Corruption was pervasive in Sierra Leone, with government officials and politicians siphoning off public funds and resources for their gain. This led to a lack of trust in the government and a sense of disillusionment among the population. In 1967, the government was overthrown in a military coup led by Colonel John Bangura, who was later replaced by Brigadier General Andrew Jackson Smith. The military government was marked by human rights abuses, political repression, and economic mismanagement, which led to widespread dissatisfaction among the population. In 1971, the military government was overthrown in a bloodless coup led by Siaka Stevens, who established a one-party state and ruled the country for the next 18 years. Stevens pursued a policy of economic nationalism, which involved nationalizing key industries and establishing state-owned enterprises. However, his government was also marked by political corruption and human rights abuses, and the country remained one of the poorest in the world. In 1985, Stevens retired and was succeeded by his deputy, Joseph Momo, who continued the policies of his predecessor. However, Momo's government was unable to address the country's deep-seated problems, which were bribery and corruption, and by the late 1980s, Sierra Leone was facing a severe economic crisis and social unrest. The government was seen as being ineffective and unable to provide basic services or security to its citizens, which created a vacuum of power that was filled by armed groups. Economic inequality. Economic inequality was a significant factor in the Sierra Leone Civil War, as it contributed to widespread frustration and anger among the population, particularly among the poor and marginalized. The country's economy was characterized by extreme poverty and inequality, with a small elite controlling most of the wealth and resources. The government's policies favored the interests of the wealthy and powerful, while neglecting the needs of the majority of the population. This led to a sense of disillusionment and alienation among many Sierra Leoneans who felt that they had no voice in the political process and were excluded from the benefits of economic growth. The exploitation of natural resources, particularly diamonds, also played a role in exacerbating economic inequality and fueling the conflict. Diamond mining was controlled by a small group of elites who profited greatly from the trade, while the majority of the population remained impoverished. In addition to political corruption and economic inequality, several other factors contributed to the outbreak and prolongation of the Sierra Leone Civil War, including 1. Ethnic tensions. Sierra Leone is a country with a diverse population, made up of over 18 different ethnic groups. Ethnic tensions and conflicts over resources and power were significant factors in the conflict, as some groups felt marginalized and excluded from political and economic power. 2. Regional instability. The civil war in neighboring Liberia, which began in 1989, spilled over into Sierra Leone, with various armed groups crossing the border and exacerbating the conflict. 3. Weak governance and state institutions. The government of Sierra Leone was weak and ineffective, with a lack of capacity to provide basic services and security to its citizens. This created a power vacuum that was filled by armed groups who were able to establish their systems of governance and control over the territory. 4. Human rights abuses. The conflict was characterized by widespread human rights abuses, including the use of child soldiers, rape, mutilation, and forced labor. These abuses were inflicted by both government and rebel forces and contributed to a sense of fear and trauma among the population. 5. External involvement. The conflict was fueled by external actors, including neighboring countries who provided support to various armed groups. The involvement of external actors complicated efforts to resolve the conflict and contributed to its prolonged nature. Beginning and course of war. All the governmental malpractices that were ongoing in Sierra Leone led to the creation of rebel groups to fight the government. These groups were able to control large parts of the country and establish their systems of governance, which often involved violence and intimidation. One of those rebel groups was the Revolutionary United Front, RUF, which was led by Foday Sanko. Sanko was a former army corporal who had been trained in both Sierra Leone and the United States. He became involved in politics in the 1970s and was a founding member of the Sierra Leone People's Party, SLPP. However, he later became disillusioned with politics and became involved in various insurgent movements, including the National Patriotic Front of Liberia, NPFL, which was led by Charles Taylor. In 1991, Sanko returned to Sierra Leone and launched an insurgency against Joseph Momo's government. His group, the RUF, quickly gained control of large parts of the country, including diamond-rich areas in the east. Sanko's tactics were marked by extreme brutality and widespread human rights abuses, including the use of child soldiers, rape, mutilation, and forced labor. The conflict began in March 1991, when the RUF launched an attack on the border town of Bomaru in eastern Sierra Leone. The RUF quickly gained control of large parts of the country, including diamond-rich areas in the east, and began a campaign of terror against the civilian population. The government of Sierra Leone, which was led by President Joseph Momo at the time, was initially unable to respond effectively to the insurgency. Within 1 year of fighting, the RUF offensive had stalled, but it remained in control of large territories in eastern and southern Sierra Leone, leaving many villages unprotected, while also disrupting food and government diamond production. Soon the government was unable to pay both its civil servants and the SLA. As a result, the Momo regime lost all remaining credibility, and a group of disgruntled junior officers, led by Captain Valentin Strasser, overthrew Momo on 29 April 1992. However, the new government was also unable to contain the conflict, and the RUF continued to gain ground. As a result of the First Liberian Civil War, 80,000 refugees fled neighboring Liberia for the Sierra Leone-Liberian border. This displaced population, composed almost entirely of children, would prove to be an invaluable asset to the invading rebel armies because the refugee and detention centers, populated first by displaced Liberians and later by Sierra Leoneans, helped provide the manpower for the RUF's insurgency. The RUF took advantage of the refugees, who were abandoned, starving, and in dire need of medical attention, by promising food, shelter, and medical care, and looting and mining profits in return for their support. When this method of recruitment failed, as it often did for the RUF, youths were often coerced by the barrel of a gun to join the ranks of the RUF. After being forced to join, many child soldiers learned that the complete lack of law, as a result of the Civil War, provided a unique opportunity for self-empowerment through violence, and thus continued to support the rebel cause. Muammar al-Gaddafi both trained and supported Charles Taylor. Gaddafi also helped Foday Sanko, the founder of the Revolutionary United Front. Russian businessman Victor Bout supplied Charles Taylor with arms for use in Sierra Leone and had meetings with him about the operations. In March 1995, with the RUF within 20 miles of Freetown, Executive Outcomes, a private military company from South Africa, arrived in Sierra Leone. The government paid Executive Outcomes (EO) $1.8 million per month, financed primarily by the International Monetary Fund, to accomplish three goals: return the diamond and mineral mines to the government, locate and destroy the RUF's headquarters, and operate a successful propaganda program that would encourage local Sierra Leoneans to support the government of Sierra Leone. EO's military force consisted of 500 military advisors and 3,000 highly trained and well-equipped combat-ready soldiers, backed by tactical air support and transport. Executive Outcomes employed Black Angolans and Namibians from apartheid-era South Africa's former Pt2 battalion, with an officer corps of white South Africans. Harper's Magazine described this controversial unit as a collection of former spies, assassins, and crack bush guerrillas, most of whom had served for 15 to 20 years in South Africa's most notorious counterinsurgency units. As a military force, EO was remarkably effective and conducted a highly successful counterinsurgency against the RUF. In just 10 days of fighting, EO was able to drive the RUF forces back 60 miles into the interior of the country. EO outmatched the RUF forces in all operations. In just 7 months, EO, with support from loyal SLA and the Kamajas battalions, recaptured the diamond mining districts and the Kangari Hills, a major RUF stronghold. A second offensive captured the provincial capital and the largest city in Sierra Leone, and destroyed the RUF's main base of operations near Bo, finally forcing the RUF to admit defeat and sign the Abidjan Peace Accord in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire, on 30 November 1996. This period of relative peace also allowed the country to hold parliamentary and presidential elections in February and March 1996. Omar Tijan Kaba, of the Sierra Leone People's Party, a diplomat who had worked at the UN for more than 20 years, won the presidential election. In 1996, a peace agreement was signed between the government and the RUF, which led to the deployment of a United Nations peacekeeping force in Sierra Leone. However, the peace agreement soon broke down, and the conflict resumed with renewed intensity. The RUF launched a series of attacks on Freetown, the country's capital, in 1999, causing widespread destruction and loss of life. In 2000, a new government was elected in Sierra Leone, led by President Ahmed Kaba. Kaba's government was supported by a regional military intervention force, known as the Economic Community of West African States Monitoring Group, ECOMOG, which was able to push the RUF out of Freetown and regain control of much of the country. In 2002, a peace agreement was signed between the government and the RUF, which led to the disarmament and demobilization of rebel fighters and the establishment of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The war officially ended in January 2002, but its legacy continued to be felt in Sierra Leone for many years, as the country struggled to recover from the devastation and trauma of the conflict. Effects of the Sierra Leone Civil War. The Sierra Leone Civil War had a profound and long-lasting impact on the country and its people. The conflict, which lasted from 1991 to 2002, resulted in the loss of tens of thousands of lives and caused widespread displacement and trauma. Some of the key effects of the war include: 1. Humanitarian crisis. The war resulted in a humanitarian crisis, with large numbers of people displaced, injured, or killed. The conflict also led to the breakdown of infrastructure, including health services, water supply, and sanitation, leading to the spread of disease and malnutrition. 2. Economic devastation. The war had a devastating impact on the economy, with large-scale destruction of property and infrastructure, and disruption of economic activity. The country's diamond mining industry, which had been a major source of revenue, was severely affected by the conflict. 3. Social and psychological impact. The conflict had a profound social and psychological impact on the population, with many people experiencing trauma, loss, and displacement. The use of child soldiers and widespread human rights abuses also contributed to a sense of fear and insecurity. 4. Political instability. The war contributed to political instability in Sierra Leone, with the government struggling to establish control over the country and provide basic services to the population. The conflict also led to a breakdown in the rule of law and the judiciary, with impunity for human rights abuses and widespread corruption. 5. Post-conflict challenges. The aftermath of the war presented significant challenges, including the need for reconciliation and healing, rebuilding of infrastructure and institutions, and addressing the root causes of the conflict, such as political corruption and economic inequality. Overall, the Sierra Leone Civil War had a devastating impact on the country and its people, with long-lasting effects that continue to be felt today. The legacy of the conflict underscores the importance of addressing the underlying causes of conflict, promoting good governance and human rights, and investing in peace-building and post-conflict recovery efforts. Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to the channel for more videos.